And so we're going to go through 3 concepts in shaping engaged teams. And why this is refreshing talent planning is because we have, over time, shifted from recruiting for specific skills, recruiting for things that have worked well for our organization in the past. But with all the change going on in the shifts, it seems like it's hard to get the right candidate. Or you get the right candidate and they're not meshing with where your organization is going or with the changes that are happening within your organization. So refresh talent planning really means that we have to consider a couple more variables in play versus just recruit, place as we used to. So let's go through the 3. The first one is going to be job matching and cross collab expectations. So where this really came in is, do we have the right person for the job, and how can we measure that? Certainly, if you've been in interviews or in the interview process or the talent planning process, you know that little biases drive people's behaviors. And so you have certain people that don't want to recruit from certain schools. You have people that, oh, they came from that company. We don't want them. And we haven't really looked at the candidate yet. And we have a new complication coming into play, which is AI. So I just talked to a client the other week, and they're actually having trouble with candidates using AI to answer their interview questions. So we worked on shifting how are we asking questions in which AI cannot complete for them. So they've had to shift their actual interview questions so that candidates aren't using AI to get through that milestone in the talent process. So we need to consider in our job matching is, how are you going to shape an engaged team? So before it was, we need this skill, let's recruit for this person that has that skill. But can they adapt? What's their agility level to change? Because that's coming, and that's going to start coming real fast. So as your organization addresses change, how do they adapt to things? What type of techniques do they apply to adapt to change? What type of examples can they give in which they had a changing situation in which they had little control of? How did they go about adapting to that, experimenting, exploring in that new situation? Those type of questions AI can't answer when you say, give me an example of. So when you start thinking about, how do I want to build an engaged team that can go here, but they else can go here, so they meet us here, how are you going to do that? And really honing into people's skill sets of how they adapt, situations that they've been in and how they responded will give you that answer. We've had candidates that they say that they kind of just, they let the team drive, and eventually, they got on board because they had to. You probably don't want those people. You've had people that said, I led the change and we made a plan and we took little milestones forward. You want those people. Here's another scenario that might come up. You have someone that says, yeah, my boss changed directions and I didn't really know what was going on. I want you to leave some space in that interview questioning. Just silence. Because if they got a beef to burn, they're going to let you know in that space. And it's kind of an HR interviewing technique that it's an uncomfortable space that we want to fill, but sometimes it gives you the red flags that you need to know that they have a lot of disdain and resentment around change, and they're going to hold back change in your organization. Another great question that will make that come out is, one, explain a situation in which change was happening and you were a little restrained in following through on the change or following the change. And you'll get fluff and puff out answers, of course, and you can ask more questions to get really down to a real answer. Or they'll give you something like, oh, well, we were changing software. They didn't really consult with our department, and then things weren't connecting. We were losing data. And then you can say, well, what did you do next? What steps did you take? And this, again, is going to show you their agility skills. So it's coming out more and more that agility skills are being more important than EQ in upcoming years, because we're going to need this outcome still. But some days are going to be over here and some days are going to be over here. And now we have new technology coming out, and now we have a workforce that wants to go fractional. There's going to be all these fireballs coming in. How do we adapt? And that's a skill that is very difficult to train. So, can we train on software? Yes. Can we train leaders if they have the competency and will to get there with different tools? Yes. Can we train on how to interview an HR person, interview skills? Yes. Those are all just tactical skills. What we can't train is the will on that change curve. We can't change how people adapt and their resistance to it. We can guide them, but they're always going to have that resistance to it. So you want to make sure that you are onboarding not only top talent, but talent that can adapt. So a great thing that I like to look at is DISC behavioral science. And it's because it's a database tool in which all those biases kind of get washed away because we're relying on what's in front of us, the report in front of us. So yes, he went to that school that you said you don't want to recruit from, but look at his profile. It's a fit. And so it takes away all those assumptions and biases. So let's go is time wasters because this is where people hide in the sand when they get stressed. This is where change is happening and chaos is happening in your organization, and people will do these type of behaviors because their brain's like, ooh, this is hard, don't like it, out of the comfort zone, and they will revert to these type of behaviors. So for example, D dominants are reds. They'll make snap decisions. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's very bad. They might even be running and sprinting, and the rest of the team is like lost. They don't even have clarification of what to do. They could be firefighting, so they're stepping in, meddling in different departments to get things done. And then they're going to be reactive versus proactive. So in the role that you need to place, do you need that for adaptability and agility, or is that going to disrupt it? So a great example of this is, do you want an accountant making snap decisions and be reactive, or do you want them being proactive? Probably not a good job match. Certainly, there are Ds that are accountants, but you want to think about adaptability. Accounting and finance, they'll adapt at a slower pace, but also their profession and their skill set doesn't transform and change very much. Now, a D in sales, a D in technical, a D in people management, like what I'm talking about in most of my videos, good thing, because it's changing. It is evolving extremely fast. They're going to do really well. So when you think about time wasters, if I had them in an accountant role and things are getting stressed, they're going to adapt in a way that's not going to be accepted within that type of profession, and it's going to be a mess, and we're going to make mistakes. Let's go to the opposite. Let's go to a C. So C's are more methodical. They're data driven. So some of their time wasters that come up when they're stressed, when there's a lot of change, is they will seek all the facts because they're losing control. They don't know what's next. They know step 1, but they don't know step 3. And so they will kind of do data digs or analysis paralysis to try to gain control and information of the situation. If you need someone to make split decisions, so we're talking like plant floor, frontline supervisors, C's aren't your people, all right? It's going to change on the hour in that type of environment, and they're going to delay that process, and they're not going to be able to adapt as fast. They will, however, do really good in certain methodical, really researched type of positions. So let's take the accounting example again. Say that you're looking for a data analyst or a cost accountant. Those people that just dig down, they want to see the gaps. They want to see what is driving this. What's the trends? What's the root cause drivers of this? That's your C's. And again, that information gives them time to dig in that type of position. So change is going to be less likely, but that change curve is going to be in line with how their work style is. So you want to be aware of the different DISC styles because that is going to drive stress in your organization. That's going to drive disengagement, and that's going to drive turnover. And I remember as our company and organization started growing, we were placing people for skill set, right? We needed an accountant, we got an accountant skill set. We needed a technical person, we got a technical skill set. And we weren't considering all the work style factors of adaptability needed in that position, in the cross collaboration that happens. You know, do they like to work more independently in silos, or do they like to work with other departments and people and work styles? there's a difference in all these positions. And when you really match people up where their work style is, it's a nice flow. Burnout's a little less because they understand each other. They're always in their zone. And obviously, it's a huge retention tool. So job matching provides that agile team. It engages the workforce, and it creates a team that's more adaptable because they're already in their work style and zone. The last thing I want to talk about job matching and cross collaboration is expectations. So when you hire someone, everyone comes on board and says, we need a data analyst. Data is driving a lot of things. We got good software now to grab data. We need a data analyst. What does that look like across the organization? It doesn't mean that you need to adhere to what they say, but I think we need a better understanding of what this department thinks this person's going to do, and that department thinks that this person's going to do. Because when you go across an organization as a third party coming in and you have a data analyst, they actually have different expectations of what that role is. What is the value that that role will bring to the organization? And when you can job match and align everyone in that, it is a nice flow because you're all looking for the same candidate. You are onboarding someone for success to bring that value as fast as possible. But oftentimes we don't look at that across departments. What does this role look like for them? And what is the expectation and value that they bring? So then you have, say, a data analyst come in, and then this department wants something, and then this department wants something, and you're not really getting the true value of what you hired that role for. So when we talk about the workflow and productivity optimization in my business model, we focus in on job matching, not just for agile teams, but across departments. What is the expectation and value of this position so that we're all aligned from the beginning on how this is going to roll out, how we're going to onboard, and how we're going to support this person. So job matching and cross collaboration should be incorporated into your talent planning because it's going to drive energy and engagement. Now, the second one I want to shine light on is our 9-box model. So in my talent planner, this is actually right in the operation, and I think that's amazing because talent planning seems to always go on the back burner, and talent planning seems to be an HR problem. Anyone say that before? Anyone hear that before? And it's interesting that it's an HR problem because if you hire the wrong people, if you don't develop the right people, people leave. And that doesn't just affect HR, that affects the department that they're in, that affects the leader that they were under, that affects the team they were with. So the reason why I like this talent management system within an operational software is it's always front and center for everyone to keep a pulse on it and keep it moving forward. So I just wanted to shine light on the 9-box matrix, which there's a whole video on my YouTube that goes through this. So we're not going to do that in this webinar. I wanted to talk about some key things that you should apply when using the 9-box matrix. So the 9-box matrix essentially places your team in performance and potential squares. Now, one thing I want you to consider when you're using this practice is rating them outside of the grid. In my experience, department leaders vouch for their team so much, and they've been with their team the most, that they will want their team members in the higher right quadrants, your key players. And that's where that bias is coming in, because another department might have a poor experience with them or a different type of situations that have come up in which that employee did not perform. And I saw this is actually interesting that we had an employee that was just what you would consider a key employee in everyone else's eyes. But in my HR eyes, I would put them in the low performer because they had a lot of harassment claims against them because they were direct enough that they were rude. They were a very rude person and they were always right. So they weren't understanding of others. So I had them literally in like harassment disciplinaries, and everyone else in the organization was putting them as our key employee, the employee we want to replicate all over the organization. It just drove me crazy because we had this bias around he can do no wrong. So that's why this should be a cross-team collaboration discussion, because one department lead might not put the employee in the same area. So rate them on potential and performance 1 to 3, because there's 3 squares across and 3 squares up before you put them on the grid. Because visually, I want mine to be in the top right corner. But when I say, his performance is a 3, but his attitude sucks. I wouldn't want him leading other people. Let's put him a 1. All right. When you split those 2 up, I'm rating each person. It's not super personal. I'm not getting super defensive. Now we plot this guy on the grid, and he's in the lower right quadrant, which means they're a solid performer, but they're not going to be our star. Okay, we already committed to that. I can't change that now. I mean, you can adapt as the year goes on, but it just gets rid of that visual bias of I want my team all in the top right corner, because that means we're amazing. We can do no wrong. And that's not a very good use of this tool. So rate potential and performance before you place people on the 9-box matrix. And then understand the variables in plays with biases and excuses and what's situational. So often in HR, we know things that are going on with people medically or personally, or even confrontation between departments and things like that other people do not know. And we don't have... we won't be telling people that, because it's told in confidentiality or even protected by law. So there's sometimes when people will place an employee lower than they should be, and it's because they're currently going through a situation. And that's why this 9-box matrix should be evaluated multiple times throughout the year by everyone, all the leadership team, because situationally, someone might just be in a rut. Situationally, someone might just be having a hard time at home, or maybe their parent just died. And so you're rating them in a time that they are checked out. Let's not hold that against people. That's very situational. So you can place them maybe like they're disengaged, they don't really want to take on more. But then when you evaluate them later in the year, don't hang on to that, because it could have been a situation that is now done and they have overcome it, which is one, showing resiliency and adaptability, agile teams, but also you're going to put them in a bucket that they can't get out of. And I've seen situations where people who are low performers continue to be low performers. And then there's people that are low performers where you have a really good coach with them and they become your stars. So let's try not to put people in buckets and be really conscious of those excuses and biases. Like, 2 years ago, he did this. We shouldn't have him in the top right corner. People change. They evolve. Let's empower them to do better, be better performers by not sticking them in buckets. And then if someone consistently is at the bottom left, so this is our low performers, so they have low performance and low potential to do anything, what are we doing to address that? Because they will be dragging the rest of the group down. And as you change faster and faster, they're going to be the ones that hold you back. They're going to be your blockers. They're going to be the people gossiping and doing the water cooler talk, draining the energy from the team. So what is going to be the process across all the departments for addressing our low performers? Because there's low performers in this department that stay forever. And everyone knows no one gets fired from this department. And then there's low performers from this department, and they get fired immediately if they do one thing wrong. So how can you be more consistent across your organization to say, these behaviors are not welcome, and we will coach you to redirect them. And if you don't want to redirect them, at that point, this is a mismatch, and let's find you somewhere else to go. So how are you going to address those bottom left? Now, the last part of this 9-box matrix that I want to talk about is your top talent. This is your top right. So your high potential, so that's the top middle. Your stars, that's the top right. And then it's the way right, middle, high performers. These are the 3 sweet spot boxes. How are you feeding top talent? Are we focusing on, do they have the flexible work that they need to sustain themselves? Are you focused on one-on-ones and not rescheduling those? Are you trying to understand their behaviors so you can replicate such behaviors across the team? It can be a spread when those type of people even become mentors, right? They lead an initiative, but they're also teaching someone else how to lead an initiative in the future. What's their value add that you want to replicate? And focus on that. And can you escalate their position and feed their need for growth through leading not just people, but could they lead product? Could they lead process? Because things are changing at a fast pace, both in people, product, and process. So could they lead one of those? They don't have to lead all of them. We've been talking about burnout with leaders. Could they lead one of those? That's a huge growth move for them, and you feed that need for engagement. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that they're getting a good amount of space, because those people get overloaded. And I think the number one thing I've been seeing in interviews lately is people backing down from their roles. Doesn't that blow your mind that we're backing down from our roles? And it's because we're overloading the top performers and the stars and the high potentials because they're very good. And we want more of that. And instead of saying, let's get more of that with all the other people, we say, just give them more because that's quicker. Well, you're burning them out. And now when I interview them, I'm wondering why they're stepping down from a manager position or a lead position. They said, I just don't want to do all that. I want to go to work, do a good job, and go home. And so they're applying a less than their potential role because someone else overloaded them. And let's not do that, because now they go in feeling a little less. Some people thrive, but once you're a high performer providing all that value and now you had to back away just because people abused it, it's not a great feeling. As a high performer myself, it wasn't a good feeling to say, I'm not going to do this anymore because I'm being taken advantage of. So how are you going to protect your top performers from that? And that brings me to our third thing. So we talked about job matching and that cross collaboration expectation of roles as we place them. What do these roles look like in the future? Let's also keep an open mind to that. 2, we went through the 9-box kind of intricacies of how we're going to place people in them, because we don't want to just place them like we used to. We need to place them in a way that guides everyone to the top right, or a majority of them. The third thing is your top performers, to keep them engaged if they're burning out, if they're overloaded, if they're looking for something different, is fractional work. So something to consider is by 2030, fractional work will be 50% of the workforce. It might not mean 50% of your workforce, but 50% of the labor force will be fractional workers. And that means very flexible work throughout the month. That might mean project type work. That might mean consultant or freelance type work. So it means that I'm not just coming in for a solution. That's kind of what I do, is like I'm an outside third-party consultant. So people are struggling and they can't figure it out, so they'll invite me in. That's a consultant. A contractor, freelance, or fractional work means we have this function to complete, and we could have our employees do it, but they're overloaded or they don't have that specific skill set, and it's going to take a while for them to train on that. So let's hire this person, and they're going to work a certain amount of hours per week or a certain amount of hours per month. That's a more common scenario. And it might be higher at the end of the month than the beginning of the month. But in general, they're contracted for 60 hours a month, and they do that work and they focus on that work, and they don't do all the noisy stuff. They don't do all the tactical stuff. So this is very much your experts, your strategic leaders that do fractional work. Now, knowing that that statistic is 50% of the labor force, what shift can you do in 2025? Can you make a 10% shift in your organization to say, you know, Kelly, our HR strategic leader, she's got her hands full at home. She's juggling a lot. I see her just like downhill physically, emotionally. She's like checking out. She's silent in meetings. Have we talked to her about fractional work? Because her value is on the strategic side and leading change and leading the organization. She doesn't need to be doing recruitment. She needs to be doing the strategic talent planning, but she doesn't need to be on phone interviews for 40 hours a week. That's not the value she brings. So can we bring in, someone that loves recruitment? That's their value. And then we shift Kelly to a fractional worker in which there's going to be highs and lows of hours throughout the month, but that's the value that she will bring, is she'll focus on strategic HR. So the shift is happening already on the East and West Coast. It's coming this way to the Midwest where I am, and we're seeing it mostly in those strategic roles. So CFOs, CEOs, strategic HR, controller type of positions. Again, when you really back up and look at the strategic part of your role, the expert part of your role that took a lot of time to learn and dig in and experience, it's probably less than 40 hours. And that's what the fractional work is. It's coming in for this specific project, strategic role, providing value. And then when there's not that need, then you're not there. And there's a whole series out on my YouTube channel. Go check it out. For both individuals that want to step into fractional work and have all that flexibility, and then organizations. How do you start the shift in the business operational readiness to accept fractional workers? My goal with some of the clients I work with is they start with some of the top talent that doesn't want to work 40 hours. So those people that are saying, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too much. Well, do you want to work less hours and have more flexibility and still provide that top tier value? We could probably do that. And again, what does that look like? Are they on your payroll? Are they off your payroll? Do they have benefits? Do they not have benefits? Usually fractional workers don't have benefits because they have inconsistent hours throughout the month. And what specific function are they expert at? So a great example of this is in IT. So IT's a lot of troubleshooting, and there's third parties to do basic desk setup and software setup. But maybe your IT person is an expert at integration. Well, sometimes you need that and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you need them to just set up new dashboards. Sometimes you need them just to run automated reports. Again, do you see it's like high, low, high, low, high, low. So maybe an IT person, for example, that's really good at integrating between systems is between 3 clients, 3 companies, and they do that work. They have a specific project scope of the work that they're going to do for these companies, and when they need them, they hop in, they get paid, and when they don't need them, they don't have to pay. So it's not a retainer. It's not like I pay you a certain amount of money and you can just call me whenever. It's specific work hours that you're getting paid for. But that's the expert specific functions I'm talking about is if you are the only one that provides that value in your organization, you're a great candidate for fractional work. And like I said, it's going to provide value to the organization. It's a cost savings because strategic type leaders, experts in your organization are costly. They should be getting the high salaries, but maybe you don't need them as much as you think you do. Maybe you only need that 60% and the 40% tactical stuff can go to someone else. Maybe you even hire someone to do the tactical stuff and the strategic leader just focuses on the value add. Now, why I'm super excited about this shift and I'm literally guiding a mastermind to create fractional workers is because I was a working parent with 3 kids and I couldn't keep up. I was suffocating every day. As a high performer, I was taking that home that I couldn't just give my all every day because then I would go home and just be a pile of crap. And then every time a kid was sick, it was panic. And with daycare crises going on, what do I do even during summer? That type of stuff. I needed flexibility basically to sustain a work-life balance, sustain just sanity of a parent. So I'm 100% on board with this fractional shift because I do think that there's people that can provide more value for more organizations when you focus on those specific expertise and specialization that they have. I think that more people need to be supportive of work-life balance, and we've been struggling on, well, how do we do that? What does that look like? And when you hone down to people's value adds, it provides that flexibility to do that. And if someone wants to make concessions on less hours and even no benefits to get that lifestyle, more power to them. I would never go back to a full-time role. Let me put it that way. Because now I've gotten a taste of the value add specific work, the flexibility so I can be a good parent at home and tend to my children and their activities. And I don't wake up in the day just dreading all the stuff I have to juggle. And I did make concessions for that and my hours and my benefits and things like that, but I gained everything. Because when you're sick and tired all the time, all that money and benefits doesn't really mean anything. And of course, you know my story where I burnt out so bad that I was going to have a heart attack at 35 from chronic stress. It does add up over the years and it catches up real fast. So fractional work is going to provide that flexibility, that energy zone of work that you're really good at. And we just need to take little baby steps on what that looks like for your organization and what it looks like maybe for you as an individual. So go check out those masterminds, both for strategic leaders and frontline leaders, but also for fractional workers, that you don't have to do this alone. There's a good peer support throughout the year to build a plan. Now, the one thing to end this with is we can't approach things with traditional ways. It doesn't mix with the modern day world. So we need to begin to think different. And part of that is refreshing our talent planning and building agile teams.